All right. Hello, everyone. Happy Tip Tuesday. I'm Sayla Shepherd, and you're tuning in to 5 points to keep in mind during the October slump. And today I have with me a very dear friend and fellow amazing marketer, Mark Peesel, who is going to introduce himself, and then we're going to get right into it with the 5 points. If you haven't been here before, you're watching Tip Tuesday, where I talk about all the latest and greatest tips and tricks for all things social media, including paid social and organic. But today we're going to be specifically talking about paid social media, your Facebook ads, and the October slump. So before we get much more into it, here's Mark. Mark has more than 20 years of experience in everything that has to do with advertising, but I'll go ahead and let him introduce himself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mark Peesel, as Sayla said. I've been doing this for over 20 years and specializing these days in online advertising. And I've done a lot of SEO and email marketing and like to consult and help people figure out the whole gamut of everything they need to do to make their websites more profitable.
Yeah, cool. Awesome. It's so good to have you here on Tip Tuesday. So we're going to talk about 5 things that everyone should keep in mind during the October slump and their Facebook ads. And the first thing we're going to talk about is CPAs. So what are you seeing right now in terms of CPAs? And although it's hard to predict, like, what do you think is going to happen as we move towards the rest of Q4?
Here's my crystal ball. I'm rubbing it right now, polishing it up. So CPAs are funny. Last year, we saw CPAs increase anywhere from 25 to 30% year over year. This year already, I have one account that's tracked a 60% increase in CPAs year over year from like mid-September to mid-October. And that's a lot of money to know that you're going to have to spend to make that sale. But that's why you really need to start finding other ways to optimize your ad campaigns to make up for those CPAs. We continue to be about that much higher than last year. We have the election coming up, and it's really anybody's guess what's going to happen during the election with CPAs. Spoke with one client that are not going to do any more advertising right now until after the election. Just to kind of wait and see what happens. And hopefully after the election, things will settle down a little bit, and traffic will settle down. But we do expect the cost to be continuing to rise.
Yeah, this year is going to be a huge year for e-commerce. More and more people are going to shop online than last year, which is going to be incredible because,
Absolutely.
even last year we saw people moving towards online, and your CPA, or cost per acquisition, if I didn't clarify that earlier, already if you have a product that is a low cost product, more of an accessory or something like that, it's going to be more important than ever to bundle it and get your average order value up. So I think that's one of the tactics that people should carry into this year, is really coming up with gift boxes and that sort of thing. And anything that they can just bundle together will really help the October slump. And then what?
We've also seen some Google Ads campaigns that have benefited from changing their campaigns type to a target CPA. Where you can target your CPA. It only really works if you have a campaign that's been selling fairly well, good profit margin, and already with a pretty decent CPA, that you can set your target CPA. And I've seen them anywhere from 10% to 25% of your average order value to set that target CPA. That can really bring your ROAS up. Again, it's not something you want to start with. You don't want to start at a target CPA, but having an optimized campaign where you can set a target CPA maybe a little bit lower than you're already getting, and then you can see some of those campaigns really start to take off.
Yeah, that's interesting to know for Google Ads. So for that strategy to work, they will have had to have ran Google Ads for a while now. When would that strategy work best? Like, would it work best if people were to implement it like beginning of November?
Yeah, I'd say you'd want to have probably a month of really good data, a month of good sales behind it before you move. Assuming you started something at maximized conversions, and then to change it to target CPA is a pretty good, decent strategy to have after you've had a month of really good conversions. Maybe your ROAS with Google Ads is in the 4, 5, or 6 range or better, and then changing it to a target CPA can really bring that ROAS up. But again, you want to have some good sales behind you.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good point. And a good strategy to test out for Google Ads, definitely.
Right. And maybe Facebook ads too. There may be a way to change your campaigns. As actually we were talking about earlier today, maybe if there's a way to use a Facebook target CPA, and I can't necessarily tell you right now that you should do that, because what we're seeing from Facebook is really highest value, lowest cost is really what's working fairly well right now on a broad campaign.
Yeah, and it definitely varies from account to account. Some accounts like minimum ROAS and value just doesn't work, and then on some it does. So it can really depend.
As I say, test, test, test.
Yeah, as a marketer, all we're doing all day long is testing. So definitely keep that one up. Okay, so that's CPAs on Google and Facebook ads. What about CPMs? And when we're talking about CPMs, we're talking about the cost per 1,000 impressions. So usually this can be pretty much attributed to how your audience is. However, there can be more factors in that as well. But what are we seeing with CPMs, and what could we maybe expect to see from your crystal ball?
I think CPMs are going similar with CPAs from what I've seen. Again, costs are going to rise across the board on everything. The CPMs will also be impacted, I think, by your impression share and how many people are seeing your ads. And those costs can be controlled a little bit more with good quality creative, good ads, good landing pages. Those can all sort of help keep CPMs under control a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good tip. I see on Facebook, generally when CPMs get around $20, I start to get nervous, and that's when I will start to look to maybe make changes. Is there a number that you usually look at when you're looking at CPMs?
I look at the CPMs and CPAs in relation to average order value and cost per click, essentially. Okay. So I don't really have a specific CPM number I look at, but as a whole, if your acquisition and is just getting more expensive, and it's getting more expensive to show your ad to everybody, then it's time to make some changes. And that's really also has to do with your cost per product. If you're selling a $30 product versus a $300 product, those numbers are all going to be changed, are all going to be different. So you want to sort of find that sweet spot for your client and your product, because it won't be the same for everybody, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, and then our next 2 points can be somewhat related, but we basically want to talk about scaling and the learning phase, and what's going to happen in the rest of the year, and how people can prepare to really dominate the learning phase and scale effectively. So what do you think about that?
Well, I think a lot about that. First of all, we should explain the October slump.
Oh, yes, we should.
Because I'm not sure we have. The October slump is what I sort of term this, and I've seen it every year now, that Black Friday, Cyber Monday, or Cyber Week, as we sometimes call it, is approaching. I believe people are slowing down their purchases, and they're turning into window shoppers. And so they're just looking around for what they want to buy during Cyber Week or Black Friday, Cyber Monday. And they're not converting as much. So you're not going to see the kind of sales right now. You're going to see ROASs drop and costs go up during this October slump, which will last through until people start promoting their Black Friday sales, which I also believe will be earlier than Black Friday this year, as it was last year. So we have these 3-ish weeks where costs are going up, conversions are going down potentially, and you want to hold this course because you want to get your ads out there. You want to get ads published and in learning phase or out of learning phase as soon as you can, so you can start scaling them appropriately for the Black Friday, Cyber Monday, Cyber Week, we'll just call it.
Mhm.
And it can take some time to scale at 15 to 18% a day. If, like, for instance, if you want to get to $10,000 a day spend and you're at 2,000 now, it's going to take you 12 days or 12 budget increases of about 18% to get there. If you're at $2,000 and you want to get to $50,000 spend a day, it's going to take you 3 weeks to get there to scale up to that point in time. Which means that if Thanksgiving is on the 23rd, I believe, you need to have your ads in and really ready to go by November 1st, so you can be scaling every day to get to that point for Cyber Week.
Yeah, that's a good point. And scaling at that percentage is so important when we talk about the learning phase, because we basically want to keep our ads as effective as possible. So when Mark talks about how many scaling times it's going to take to get to a certain budget, he's saying we're going to scale as safely as possible at the lowest percent possible. We're not just going to go in there and add 50% of our budget. So that's important to understand when scaling too.
Now, there is something I heard from my Facebook rep recently that she said, if you're at those high spends already, and you want to get there, you want to spend, like, if you're spending $10,000 a day and you want to get to 50 at $10,000 a day, chances are you're getting through learning phase maybe hopefully in hours versus days and weeks. So there's a theory that says just bump it up to 50 grand a day or to wherever you want to go. I'm not necessarily a proponent of that, because we've seen those kind of campaigns really crash and burn. So I don't necessarily recommend it, but I did hear that some people are doing that with large spends.
Okay, yeah. But if you're just spending, maybe even a couple thousand a day, then scaling smaller is probably better.
That's the best way to do it, for sure. No more than
Yeah.
20% a day. So that's why I land around 18%. The lower your percentage of increase, the more stable Facebook will remain, even though you don't officially get into learning phase. If you're spending lower than 20%, Facebook does have to learn a little bit every time you scale.
Yeah, which makes sense, because as you add budget, I mean, Facebook can go after more people and people with different buying patterns. So it does take a little bit of learning, and that's why a smaller increase is usually better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so that covers scaling and the learning phase and the importance of scaling a small amount and how it might take a little bit more time. So to plan your campaigns accordingly. And then, of course, the last thing we have to talk about is creative. It's always a fun thing, always talked about. So is there something particular people should be doing as they get ready for the holidays with their creative? Anything you're seeing working really well?
Yeah, I've been seeing some more homegrown videos, where
Homegrown.
the company themselves will do some videos of the product, do some maybe some high speed sort of videos of using the product, something that really catches someone's eye. The goal being to let the user imagine what it's like to have that as their product. So whether it's an exercise or fitness or home good or something like that, let the user imagine themselves being in front of it and have some movement to catch their eye. That's kind
Mhm.
of what I'm seeing really working right now.
Yeah, definitely the movement. I've seen a lot of just like small animations performing really well, especially bottom of funnel. I've seen that work, just catching the eye. And then, of course, now Facebook's letting us use text in our image as much as we want. So it could be a really interesting holiday season to see what advertisers come up with.
Right. I have a feeling we're going to see similar to the death by PowerPoint um, concept, where people put way too much content in their images and it's too hard to read. So make sure you don't do that. They did reduce that. They removed that restriction, but I'd still recommend staying not doing more than like 20% of your image be text, and making sure it's readable, especially when you're on a small screen,
Yeah.
to make sure it's still readable by the user.
Yeah. And making sure that it is not ugly.
Exactly.
Making sure that it still looks good.
Yep.
And then I guess another point of creative is just the different platforms and Instagram versus Facebook versus even Google Ads. Like, is there anything that should be different for these different platforms in terms of creative?
Um, you can get as granular as messaging and playing to your audience and to where those ads are showing. So definitely stories, taking advantage of the story format is a great thing to do. If you use a square image in Instagram stories, you can still have some content below it. But if you're going to use a story format, then you want that content in the image itself or in the video, whatever you're promoting there. Google dynamic display ads are pretty good because you can have lots of different images and some different videos, and Google's pretty good about putting those together in the right combination. And then Google, which is ahead of Facebook in this, will actually tell you which ones of those items are performing better than the others, which is really nice, because then you can create new, more static search ads based on the pieces of the dynamic ads that are working really well.
That's cool. That's a good point. Okay. Yeah, definitely thinking about creative as we move into and people start to plan their sales. I mean, you should probably have those solidified pretty much by now. If not, that is
Right.
your homework the next week, figuring out what your sales are and what
Right.
creative you're going to start to use, because November is right around the corner.
Get your creative, your content, and your offer on the table and ready to go, and start building ads so you can get those live here pretty soon.
Yeah, yeah. That sounds good. Okay, awesome. So today on Tip Tuesday, we talked about the October slump, which is the period in time in which people are window shopping for their next product or sale or whatever they're going to buy for the holidays. And in that, we talked about CPAs and CPMs that are both on the rise. We talked about scaling and the learning phase and how important it is to scale effectively. And then we also talked about creative. So we talked about a lot today, and I'm really excited that Mark was here to help me talk about these things. So yeah, thank you so much, Mark. Where else can people find you, or where can they hear more if they want to learn anything?
Yeah, thanks again, Sayla. It's been great.
Yeah.
You can find me at my website at backleft.com. I'm also on Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook and all those places, but definitely come to backleft.com. That's the best place to probably find me right away.
Cool. Yeah, all the social medias. And I'll be sure to tag you in the comments, or if anyone has any questions, I'll be sure to ask Mark directly. So feel free to comment below. And as always, everyone, thank you for tuning into Tip Tuesday. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Okay, thanks.